The headline is not a metaphor. It's the new, terrifying reality of the war in Ukraine. The front has not collapsed in the way we understand it, with a sudden, massive breakthrough and columns of tanks sweeping forward. It has collapsed into a chaotic, fragmented, and bloody mess. The very concept of a solid, continuous front line, a staple of warfare for over a century, is now obsolete. The war has changed, and it is no longer the same conflict it was just a year ago. For the first 2 years of the war, military analysis was a relatively straightforward affair. We could use satellite imagery, geolocated videos, and reports from the ground to draw a solid, continuous line on a map. This line represented the front, and the fighting took place along its length. It was a war of attrition for fortified positions, with large-scale assaults and clear lines of engagement. This was the war we became accustomed to, a brutal but comprehensible conflict that could be mapped and tracked. But that war is over. The war of 2025 is a different beast entirely. It is a war of infiltration and small, isolated groups, a conflict that is fought in the shadows and across a vast, sprawling gray zone. We are no longer seeing massive battles for fortified trenches. Instead, we are seeing a tactical revolution, where small Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups are bypassing Ukrainian positions and appearing miles deep into the rear. We see this in reports that are now common, where Russian flags are temporarily raised on a building, only to be taken down hours later. These are not signs of a successful advance. They are signs of a new kind of war, a war where the front line is not a line at all, but a fluid, fragmented, and terrifyingly permeable zone. This new reality is a nightmare for military analysts and for the public trying to understand the war. The old methods of drawing a solid line on a map are now completely irrelevant. The maps themselves are starting to disagree, with some showing a Russian advance of several kilometers and others showing no change at all. And the reason for this is simple. There is no longer a continuous front line to map. There are just small, isolated groups of soldiers fighting for control of a few buildings or a small patch of forest, with kilometers of contested territory between them. The idea that a single video of a flag being raised in a town means that town has been captured is now a dangerous oversimplification. As we have seen in recent reports, a town can be declared captured one day, only to have the Ukrainian flag raised again a few hours later. This is not a failure of intelligence, it is a failure of the old model to capture the reality of this new conflict. The very concept of a front has been replaced by a gray zone, a chaotic and deadly no man's land where small units fight for a brief, fleeting moment of control before being forced to retreat or being destroyed. This new tactic of infiltration, which is a direct response to Ukraine's mastery of drones, is now the dominant form of fighting. The Russian military, unable to win a conventional battle, is now resorting to a slow, methodical, and bloody campaign of infiltration, where they send small groups of men to die in the hopes of creating a foothold in the Ukrainian rear. And in this new war, the maps are no longer our guide. They are a dangerous illusion that is hiding the true, terrifying nature of the war that is now being fought. We have seen the strategic collapse of the front line, but to understand how Ukraine is not being overrun, we must now delve into the heart of their defense, an incredibly innovative and deeply painful tactical revolution born out of necessity. This is the new reality of the war, a brutal lesson in how to fight a numerically superior enemy when you are critically short on manpower. The problem is real and it is urgent. According to frontline analysts who have recently visited the war zone, the Ukrainian military is facing a chronic and critical shortage of infantry. Following the costly counteroffensive of 2023, the ranks of many brigades were never fully replenished. The numbers are shocking. In a typical Ukrainian brigade, only 10% of the personnel are infantrymen assigned to hold the forward positions. The other 90% are tied up in logistics, support, communications, or drone units. This means that instead of a company of 100 soldiers defending a kilometer of front line, The Ukrainian military is often forced to rely on small, isolated groups of just 6 to 8 soldiers. This is a defensive line that is less a wall and more a sieve, with vast, undefended gaps between these small units. But what Ukraine lacks in manpower, it has made up for in ingenuity. Since they cannot win a conventional battle of attrition, they have fundamentally changed the rules of engagement. The new orders for Ukrainian infantry are not to engage in direct combat. They are not to hold the line with a continuous fire of bullets and grenades. Their new job is to be the eyes of the defense. They are small, decentralized groups, often just 3 or 4 men, who are ordered to remain hidden and undetected at all costs. Their primary mission is to identify the enemy's movements, the small infiltrating Russian groups, and to immediately report their location. To open fire is to commit suicide. A single shot would reveal their position, and in a war dominated by drones and glide bombs, a revealed position is a dead position. This is a complete reversal of traditional military doctrine. The Ukrainian infantry is no longer the primary fighting force, it is the intelligence-gathering force. The real combat power is now delivered by drones and artillery. The infantry's new role is to sit in silence, to be the silent witnesses who guide the real weapons to their targets. This is how Ukraine turns Russia's numerical advantage into a liability. When a small group of Russian infiltrators is spotted, the Ukrainian infantry doesn't rush out to engage them. They send the coordinates to their drone operators, who then use their own lethal payloads or guide artillery fire to eliminate the threat. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy that allows Ukraine to fight a battle of technology and precision, a battle that they are winning. This is a defensive model that is directly connected to the gray zone we discussed earlier. The lack of a solid, continuous front line is a deliberate choice. It allows Russia's small, infiltrating groups to pass through the gaps, but it also makes it impossible for Russia to mount a conventional large-scale attack. They can't attack a line that doesn't exist. Instead, they are forced to fight a chaotic, fragmented battle against an enemy they can't see, an enemy that is using its eyes and its brains to turn their numerical advantage into a death trap. This is a tragic and brilliant example of a military that is learning, adapting, and innovating under the most brutal conditions. They have compensated for their lack of manpower, not with more men, but with a new kind of war.
We've discussed the new tactics of the infantry, but to understand how a battle is truly won or lost in 2025, we must now delve into a silent, subterranean revolution. The old-school military mind believes a defensive line is made of trenches, sandbags, and barbed wire. That thinking, in the era of omnipresent drones and real-time surveillance, is completely and utterly wrong. In this war, a conventional trench is not a defense, it's a death trap. This is the new reality of the battlefield, a lesson that both sides have learned at an immense and bloody cost. The traditional fortification, a staple of warfare since World War I, has been rendered obsolete. An open-top trench is a perfect target for a small, cheap FPV drone carrying a high-explosive grenade. A large, unmasked fortification becomes a beacon for a precision artillery strike or, even worse, a glide bomb. These weapons, which have become the defining feature of this conflict, have made any static, above-ground defensive position a suicidal proposition. The battle is no longer won by holding a line. It is won by denying the enemy a target to hit. This is why both sides have begun to move underground. This is a crucial element of modern warfare that is often overlooked. The new fortifications are not in a line, they are in a network. We're seeing the construction of elaborate tunnel systems, subterranean bunkers, and hardened positions that are designed to survive the very attacks that have made above-ground warfare so deadly. This is a revolution in defensive architecture, a response to a world where the sky is watching, and a single glimpse of a target can lead to its destruction. Russia, in particular, has made this a core part of its defensive strategy. According to reports from the front, in some areas, the Russian military has built extensive tunnel systems, with some reportedly stretching for 10 to 15 kilometers. This is not a simple foxhole. It is a massive, serious investment in a new kind of defense. It shows that they have learned the brutal lesson that their traditional fortifications, which were so easily destroyed by Ukraine's HIMARS and drones, are no longer viable. They have realized that the only way to survive the relentless onslaught of modern weaponry is to get out of its way. The strategic advantages of this new underground warfare are staggering. These subterranean bunkers and tunnel systems provide protection from a wide range of modern threats, including FPV drones, glide bombs, and the relentless hail of artillery shells. This allows a force to survive a heavy bombardment and emerge to fight. It's a direct counter to the drone artillery complex that has dominated the battlefield. A force that can operate underground can effectively disappear from the enemy's surveillance, forcing them to engage in a costly, brutal, and often futile search and destroy mission. This is a change that redefines the very nature of the conflict. The battlefield is no longer a two-dimensional plane. It is a three-dimensional space, and the side that can effectively move and operate underground will have a significant advantage. This is a change that has profound implications for the future of warfare. It shows that the most effective force is not the one with the biggest guns, but the one that is the most adaptable. The war is no longer about holding a line. It is about surviving an onslaught, and the only way to do that is to go where the enemy cannot see you. The old map is dead. The new war is being fought in the shadows and in the tunnels, and the side that can master this new domain will be the one that wins.
We've established the new reality of the front, and we've seen how the defense is moving underground. But to truly understand the struggle for every inch of territory, we must now turn to the core tactical confrontation of this new war: the battle between Russia's brutal infiltration tactics and Ukraine's technological response. This is a clash between two fundamentally different approaches to warfare, and its outcome will decide the future of the conflict. Russia's new tactic is a direct and brutal answer to Ukraine's mastery of the drone. For months, Russia failed to break through the Ukrainian drone wall with conventional armored assaults, so they have adapted. Their new strategy is a bloody, slow, and methodical campaign of infiltration. They are no longer sending massive armored columns forward. Instead, they are sending small, isolated groups of 2 to 4 men to bypass Ukrainian positions, often under the cover of night and using thermal camouflage ponchos. They are not trying to capture a trench line in a single decisive attack. They are trying to find a weak point, to create a foothold in the Ukrainian rear, and to survive long enough for a second wave to follow. This is a war of attrition in its most brutal form, a high-risk, high-reward gamble, where they are willing to sacrifice dozens of men in the hope that one group will survive and establish a foothold. But Ukraine is not just a passive defender. It is also adapted to this new kind of threat. What it lacks in manpower, the chronic shortage of infantry we discussed, it has made up for in ingenuity and technology. The Ukrainian response to this infiltration is a two-pronged approach that combines a sophisticated defensive network with a mobile, high-tech offense. First, there is the technological response. Ukraine is now using unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, for fire support and for hunting down these infiltrating groups. These small, remote-controlled robots are equipped with machine guns and are used to patrol the areas between Ukrainian positions, eliminating the enemy without risking human lives. In a recent example, Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade used these ground drones to provide covering fire for their stabilization operations. They even mounted loudspeakers on the robots to broadcast "Russian soldier, surrender" in a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. This is a perfect example of a new asymmetric counter-tactic that allows Ukraine to use technology to compensate for its lack of manpower. Second, there is a new emphasis on mobile assault groups. Since the front line is no longer a solid wall, the Ukrainian military cannot simply hold a line and hope to repel an attack. They must now actively hunt down and eliminate these infiltrating groups before they can establish a foothold. This requires a new kind of force, highly mobile, well-equipped assault groups that can be rapidly deployed to the rear to eliminate these pockets of resistance. These groups, often drawn from Ukraine's most elite units, are trained to fight in the chaotic, fragmented gray zone
and to eliminate the enemy in a close-quarters urban environment. We've seen examples of this in recent reports, where Ukrainian tanks and drones have been used to hunt down and destroy Russian groups that have infiltrated a town, proving that a small, isolated group of infantry is no match for a coordinated, technologically advanced counterattack. This is a new kind of arms race. Russia is using its sheer numbers to try and overwhelm Ukraine, while Ukraine is using its technological superiority and tactical agility to counter the threat. This is a battle between an old, brutal, human-centric form of warfare and a new, technologically advanced one. The Russian command is willing to sacrifice its soldiers in a feudal, old-school campaign, while the Ukrainian command is using its most valuable resources, its technology and its tactical ingenuity, to outsmart them. The outcome of this new war will not be decided by who has the most men, but by who has the most innovative technology and the most adaptable tactics.
We've delved into the tactics, the technology, and the subterranean revolution of this war. But now we must address the final, comprehensive verdict on what all of this means for our understanding of the conflict. The old ways of analyzing this war are dead. The maps are lying to us. The simple geolocated videos we've all come to rely on are now a dangerous, misleading illusion. This is the new reality of a war that is no longer about a line on a map, but about a constant, grinding struggle in the shadows. The old method of open source intelligence, or OSINT, is now obsolete for determining the front line. We used to be able to geolocate a video of a soldier in a town and draw a line behind it, confidently claiming that the town was captured. That is no longer possible. The new reality of Russian infiltration means that a single soldier in a basement does not mean the town is captured. A video of a drone dropping a bomb on a building in a town does not mean that town is now under Ukrainian control. The concept of a continuous front has been replaced by a chaotic and dangerous layer cake, where Russian and Ukrainian positions are intermingled, often just a street apart. This is a nightmare for analysts and a constant danger for the soldiers on the ground. And it's a reality that is being exploited by a new, cynical form of propaganda, flag planting. Russian commanders, unable to achieve any real victories, are offering soldiers leave to sneak into a town and pose with a Russian flag for a drone video. The video is then published by the Ministry of Defense as proof of a captured town, while in reality, the soldiers who planted the flag are either dead or have no real control over the area. This is a terrifying and deeply cynical tactic that highlights the profound disconnect between the propaganda and the reality on the ground. It is a show of force that is built on nothing but a lie and the blood of its own soldiers. This new kind of warfare is no longer about territorial conquest. It's about control of the gray zones and the exhaustion of the enemy. The war of 2025 is a slow, methodical, and brutal war of attrition that is being fought not with grand, sweeping maneuvers, but with small, isolated skirmishes. The focus has shifted from capturing a city to simply making it uninhabitable for the enemy. The war is now about who can last longer, who can endure more, and who can inflict more pain on the enemy's logistics and its morale. The final verdict on this new reality is a sobering one. The maps we relied on are no longer our guide. The front line is a dangerous illusion. And the only way to understand this war is to move past the simple metrics of territory and to focus on the systemic indicators of its true status. We must look at the rate of casualties, the loss of equipment, and the psychological state of the soldiers. The war is a marathon, and the victory will go to the side that is most capable of adapting to this new reality, not to the one that is still fighting a war that exists only in its own imagination.